I don't know, you're on.
Now I am.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good morning. It's Friday, May 3rd. This is a special meeting of the Darien Board of Education Policy Committee. Our next meeting is to be scheduled. And I'll turn it right over to you, Marge.
Okay, policy 9160, the policy has been changed to reflect the committee's desire that upon filling a vacancy of the board, if somebody was elected as an unaffiliated voter, the position will be filled by an unaffiliated voter. If somebody switched parties after they got on the board, the vacancy would be filled by the original party that they were affiliated with when they were elected.
Yes, John.
And it leaves the language that the chairperson of the board may consult with any applicable town committee, basically, in seeking to identify potential candidates.
Right.
So it allows that,
Yes.
but it's not binding
Yes.
as per state statute.
And that was to protect the board. She added that language.
Awesome.
Not
Okay. So it keeps everybody happy.
Yes.
I'm good with that one.
Yeah.
Good. So we'll take that forward.
Are Dave and Jill on? Can we?
I know Jill is.
Dave is
Dave
not.
okay?
Dave is
No?
not. Okay.
Okay. Hopefully he'll join us
Okay.
soon.
Okay, for policy 9310, meeting conduct, we are still looking at the provision on public participation and whether the committee wants to recommend limiting the aggregate amount of time that is devoted to any subject in public comment. Also, we did make the change that speakers only need to identify their name and town of
Perfect.
residence.
That one is long and coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
That's a
think
nice,
that's-
easy fix. I
That's
think.
helpful. Yeah.
So can we just go over the section about limiting, I guess?
The time, yeah.
Yes.
I did want to just point out that Mrs. Best did find policies from other districts, which I think yes, there is a page
Yeah, there,
that shows you what other districts do.
Just to give some examples.
I would be, do you want, come on?
Please, yeah, go ahead.
Would be in favor of limiting public comment at the beginning to, I don't want to limit the topics that they can speak to, but to like maybe just say 60 minutes at the beginning, because we have long meetings. And then if there's more public comment afterwards, unlimited at the end. I don't know. I think, I don't want to, I mean, I think limiting it to, some of these had it like to like 15 minutes or whatever at the beginning. That seems very, very short to me. Just throwing that on the table.
So a number of them limited it to 15 minutes per topic,
Yeah.
which seems very clumsy to me. I haven't watched that in practice, but I can't imagine how it works neatly. And
Mhm.
so I don't like that approach. I hear what you're saying, Sarah. I guess my preference, just to put it out there, and then John will tee it over to you and see who's on Zoom, Jill or Dave, if they want to chime in, but I would prefer to not limit it as a blanket policy, but on an occasion where either the agenda is such or the topics have been discussed many, many times, et cetera, to have the opportunity or the option for the board to decide to put a limit on it on an occasion. I know I said that twice,
Would
but
it
I
be
just wanted
the
to stress
board
that.
or the board chair? Like at the beginning?
No,
of the
we'd have to
meeting?
vote to make it happen.
Okay.
Right? It's not an individual unilateral decision.
So can we just address the section? So we're talking about section 6, right, Mark?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, public address.
Okay, so the no boisterous conduct, that makes sense. All speakers must identify themselves by name and town of residence. That's what we just did. So this is a section that we're talking about. 3 minutes may be allotted to each speaker and a maximum of X minutes should be to each subject matter. The board by majority vote of members may modify these limitations at the beginning of a meeting if the number of persons wishing to speak makes it advisable to do so. So I think at some point, I guess my bias would be to Sarah's idea, limit the actual time allotted to public comment to an hour at the beginning of the meeting, insofar that there's another public comment at the end of the meeting. And I do think it's a good idea, and this is not addressable to public hearings. That's a whole different. I do like the opportunity, if we know it's a hot topic, to limit by a board vote, to limit the time each speaker has, because what I found, and I dealt with this on P and Z, you get 12 people literally saying the exact same thing. And what we were able to do on P and Z is just ask people to say, just cite what what you support. And if you have nothing new to add, then move on. It gives the amount of speakers. So I'm hoping that if you had a really hot topic and you limited it to an hour and then told people 2 minutes. And if you have 2 minutes, you know, please, if you're going to repeat somebody, just say that you're going to repeat somebody. We get a little more efficiency and people still have their voice. And then if they feel like their opinion wasn't expressed, you also have the end of it. So.
Can I ask, Marge, if we are talking about having well, we have agreed that we can put an end time on a meeting if we choose to do so. That would still mean that we would have public comment at the end of that meeting and so we could let that go as long as possible, even though we've hit the magic 10:30 hour or
So you
whatever.
need to vote to go past 10:30, but I can just clarify whether we need language here that allows you to extend public comment.
Wait,
I don't know
can
why.
I confirm that? Is it vote to extend beyond 10:30 or vote to?
Vote to take up a new agenda item. So the
After
question is
after
whether
10:30,
public
So
comment.
we would just vote.
I mean, but we always have public comment on
Right.
the end.
Right, but we've never had an end time before.
No,
I just
right.
want to make sure that we're not suggesting that we can tell people definitely come back and say what you want to say at public comment at the end, if that's going to get chopped with this new provision to be able to.
Okay, so this provision doesn't have a limit to an hour. So the way it's written is just, if we know we've got the hot topic, we can go from 3 minutes to 2 minutes. So I think that's a great first step.
But I think that's hard to do in the moment because people prepare a 3-minute speech, and if we chop it down to 2 minutes at the beginning, that's what's putting people on their back foot.
It's hard. We've done it.
Yeah.
I've done it with you. It's, and I do think that, I mean, I'd rather cut it from 3 to 2 minutes when we have a hot topic than cut the number of people who are
Yeah.
able to speak to us
That's fair.
personally.
Yeah.
I think in those moments, and maybe we need to have it scripted to remind people, we want to hear your points. We love when people tell us that they appreciate the work we're doing and they're thankful for all our hours, but cut that part out. Like that's a given, and go ahead and tell us the things we need to hear. I do think it's hard. It does feel like people are saying similar things, but they're nuanced sometimes. And maybe it's hard. They definitely are still trying to make a different point than what's been said before. So I don't want to just easily get up and say, I'm on the side of do it. Because that's really, public comment's not a vote, right? It's to understand the meat of how people feel and why they feel that way.
It's not a referendum.
Exactly. Thank you. Dave, would you like to chime in?
I'd love to chime in. My question on, so I'm we're just gonna talk over it. Hopefully you guys can hear me. We're gonna go 7:30 to 10:30. I don't understand how this will work. I have 1 hour beginning and unlimited end. So raise this earlier. That's really my question. How this will work.
I didn't really.
If we're saying we'll allow an hour of public comment at the beginning and unlimited at the end, but we're also talking about having a 10:30 end time, how does that work? How do we have our meeting? Is that right, Dave?
Yes, because we had an hour, 7:30 to 8:30, and we have 2 hours to go to work. That's the problem. So the hour seems too long if we're going to have a time limit. Also, if we're going to cut off at 10:30, then we don't get cut off at 10:30 because they had 2 hours of public comment.
Right. That does get messy.
All right, we have adopted the 10:30, right? So let's stick to what's in front of us now. So we
Yeah,
have
I
no
think-
time limit. We have no time limit in the suggestion right now to an hour. In
Right.
this suggestion. The only suggestion right now is if we vote, we can limit from 3 to 2 minutes on any given night. I like this language as it stands. This way we can get through a number of speakers without putting a time limit on public comment in the front end and be more efficient.
Well, what about the second half of that sentence?
So
The
you're
3 minutes may
striking-
be allotted to each speaker, and then in the blue, and a maximum of blank minutes to each subject
Yeah,
matter. Do
we
you
guess
strike
it's-
that?
Striking that?
Yeah.
Is that workable, Marge, if we struck the second half of that sentence, so a maximum of blank minutes to each subject matter? and then left it as broad as the board by majority vote of members present can modify these limitations at the beginning of a meeting.
Well, it would probably then be this limitation, right? Because
This
it would just be the 3 minutes and you would let public comment go on.
Okay,
Yeah.
so then the only tool we're giving ourselves is the allotted time per speaker, not the allotted time for public comment.
Correct.
And I mean, to be fair, there are nights where we get a very lengthy public comment period, but they're not that often.
No, well,
Some seasons.
you're
they're more
forgetting
often.
COVID, but.
Right.
And, you know, so anyway, I think this achieves what we need on a night that we're worried about not getting to other
Yeah.
agenda items. And it's going to be used very infrequently,
Right.
the way I see it.
That's what I would think and hope too, yeah.
I just note that, just what John said a wee bit earlier too, it obviously doesn't impact public hearings, public discussions that we've
Right.
used before too. And I will say, I think the board is very inclusive in terms of these remote opportunities. Even at the closure, you can do remote comment from home.
Yeah.
I think there's just.
Yeah.
There's opportunities there.
Dave, any more from you?
I had two
Oh,
things.
thanks.
One, I think this should probably go to the full board for consideration at some point. And
Yeah,
two, my Zoom reinstalling this morning, did we address 9160 already?
Yes.
We did. If you wanted to say something on that, we can go back to that in a sec, if that's okay, but maybe we finish here first.
That'd be great, thank you.
Jill, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yes, this is probably more a mechanical issue than a policy issue. But in order to know that you have a lot of speakers, you need a way to capture that, whether it's a sign-in sheet or something else. I'm echoing Saul's stop.
No, you're not echoing it. I mean, we could institute a signing sheet at the beginning of every
I
meeting.
mean, I mean, it doesn't have to be a policy to use a sign-in sheet. If we think we have a hot topic, we
Yeah.
just use a hot sign-in sheet.
You know, we can tell by the number of people that are
Right.
sitting in our seats and
I was going with a read the room kind of thing,
Yeah.
but it's a fair point.
Never cast the room.
I don't know if we want to make a sign-in.
Yeah,
I don't know if we need a sign-in as a policy though. I mean, that's just common
Right.
sense.
I don't think it's a policy issue. I
okay,
just don't want to unevenly apply it. So if you're
Okay.
going to switch it to 2 minutes, you need a relatively neutral way to apply it in
Yeah.
multiple scenarios.
Yep.
and again,
okay.
don't envision it happening often, okay. All right, so with that on 9310, are we comfortable taking this forward to the full board for
Yep.
discussion?
Yes, please.
Dave, you good?
Yes, I'm good.
Okay. And with that, should we go back to 9160 for a moment?
Yeah.
Please, thank you.
Thanks, guys. Don't know if this is addressed. I guess the question I had was around the unaffiliated. And looking at the statute 167A, I see the ratios that are laid out there. I just didn't understand why we're giving unaffiliated protection, that seat has to be refilled with an unaffiliated.
Sorry, we missed the question there, Dave.
So I'm sorry, that echo, this is difficult. We have an affiliated political party laid out beginning or unaffiliated political party. I don't understand why we're deciding to implement a rule that unaffiliated has to be filled with unaffiliated. I understand we can do policies that are more restrictive than what's in a statute, but statute 167A just has a ratio. It doesn't specify political parties. Here, we're kind of extending that if you're unaffiliated, we're going to go through an effort to make sure an unaffiliated is. So to my mind, Democrat, Republican, fine. I don't understand why we have unaffiliated. Sometimes maybe a win for Republicans, sometimes a win for a Democrat, but I don't understand why we're going to make this effort to preserve an unaffiliated for an unaffiliated.
I think the legal guidance was that because of the large number of unaffiliated voters in Darien, you could end up with an unaffiliated member and there was no mechanism in the policy to deal with it.
I understand that, but the mechanism is you're an unaffiliated to leave and then the ruling party puts in somebody of their own. So why are we, there's no requirement to protect unaffiliated per se.
But to me, that's the will of the electorate, that they elected an unaffiliated voter.
Is it?
That's,
Well, they did, is
Yeah.
what we're saying in that scenario.
This is not in the statute, correct?
mm-mm.
No, the only reference to the statute is so that you can't violate the ratios.
Right, and but it is also in the statute that party member and party member.
Yeah.
All right, so
In the charter.
I know there's some questions about unaffiliated, but I'm kind of with Dave, I don't foresee the need to, in his word, protect the unaffiliated if it's not in the statute. So, I think it'll be up to the will of the board. So I'm kind of siding with that language, not be necessary.
I'm sorry, so I guess Jessica's question was, the old policy said you fill it with a member of the same party.
Yeah.
So we would need to revise the language again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But, okay, so
So I'm not clear. So what would we revise the language again to specify? I know we
To
don't have
say
the
that
exact
the-
language.
Majority party?
no, you wouldn't, you'd just say select, I mean, if it's, it basically says party member and party member,
Mhm.
okay?
Yes.
The statute, as I understand it. It says nothing about unaffiliated.
Correct.
So I don't see the need to say anything about unaffiliated. It'd be up to the board how they fill. There's no restriction on how it can fill. So the board may choose to fill it with an unaffiliated. The board may choose to replace it with a Democrat. The board may choose to replace it with a Republican. But it would be up to the board to fill that spot.
So the old language to the policy said you had to fill it with a member of the party
Right.
of the resigning. So I'm not sure what guidance to give.
So I guess my point is we don't have to because unaffiliated is not a party. So the policy just would leave it up to the board as I would think of it as the old language.
It could be anybody as long as they violate 6, 7.
Yeah,
Which goes back to kind of the free for all, weren't we
Yeah.
talking about the concern that then it becomes a,
The lawyers were concerned that the unaffiliated, because there was no provision, might cause problems.
Yeah.
But we're not
that's-
the only ones that don't deal with unaffiliated in their policies.
right?
so I think we have a split opinion here, so why don't we just take this right to the board?
Okay.
I agree. I think we're probably split.
So I'll give the board both versions.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Marge. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks for going back.
Yeah,
Okay, policy 9340. Shipman and Goodwin did a, thank you, Darian, for reviewing the policy, their policy, which had a mistake in it. So the provision in 1C, which says that at least three board members can request in writing that an item be placed on the agenda. Actually, that belongs in policy 9320, because what the statute says that you have to have a board meeting at least every 6 months. If the chair is refusing to do it, 3 board members can force a meeting. So her suggestion was to eliminate it in that language in this policy and move it to policy 9320, which we did. Also, again, Shipman and Goodwin's policy seemed to make it that any town resident could get an item placed on the agenda at any time. This gives the board the opportunity to discuss it at a meeting and decide.
but it puts
Put it on
more
the
meat
agenda.
around that one
Mhm.
because that one was just kind of left out there,
Yes.
may.
Yeah,
And it's like,
Correct.
board didn't have to address it, the chair didn't have to address it, so,
She was actually horrified at the language,
Oh,
to be
really?
honest. Yeah, she's like,
okay,
what?
good.
So,
So that was a good fix.
yep.
I have a couple of questions on this one.
Mhm.
1B, so any member of the board may contact the chair or the superintendent to request an item be placed on the agenda. Should there be a provision that does not need to be granted?
So I did ask that and it says may
Okay,
and request, but if you wanted to be clearer, we could be clearer.
I mean, but it doesn't say anything, so would the member may contact the chair or the superintendent, but it doesn't say anything about where that goes. So, if I want to talk about, chicken nuggets not being served at lunch, that's not something the board needs to discuss.
The
So-
powers with the chair, solely with the chair as it's written, but we can change that.
Well, and also remember, you can change an agenda item with 2/3 vote of the board too.
Sure.
agendas.
I just didn't know if that needed to be more specific, excuse me. Okay, my other question was D3. The board will decide whether the item will appear on the agenda. Is that by majority vote, 2/3 vote, majority? Okay.
I like the additions to D, it sets a process
Yeah.
that makes it
Mhm.
not just a quick email, hey, can you add this? And it just goes into interline. Okay.
Mhm.
So ultimately that request will come through, in this case, yourself to the board through an agenda.
Yep.
Yeah.
Dave or Jill, questions? I can't see you, Jill, so I don't know if you're trying to speak.
I'll raise my hand or I'll jump in if I need to. Thank you for
Yeah.
asking.
Just jump in because I don't see you on the screen at all, is what I meant. I'm sorry.
Okay,
You're-
thank you.
Dave, you're good? Are you,
Yes.
okay. All right, cool.
So policy 9320, time, place, and notice of meetings just adds, the only new revision adds the language that we just discussed. That 3 board members, if the board hasn't met in 6 months, can demand a meeting. And that's in 1D.
When. But just going back to that, the one we moved. 3 board members can request a special meeting without the provision that we hadn't had a meeting, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry, my bad. Any board members, 3 board members can request a special meeting at any time.
Okay, perfect.
Right.
Thank you.
And I think that's what you were looking for last time we talked about these, where that lived, and that's in
And again,
here.
a very infrequent
Right,
occurrence, but it's happened, so. Like to preserve that.
yeah.
And going to 3A, meeting time and place, are we putting in 7:30 and 10:30?
Yes.
Marge, I have some just formatting and typo stuff. I'll just send that to you separately. I know the formatting gets wonky on the red line
Yeah.
stuff, so
Yep.
I'm just not torturing us with that now.
No problem. So 9410, we're recommending that you repeal this policy and instead use Shipman's model policy. Just, quoting a definition of policy is not probably necessary or enforceable, and the remaining provisions are covered in Shipman and Goodwin's model policy. Okay. So, sorry.
Sorry, just checking on the
No.
crowd.
So here's another, when Jessica and I were talking, we were like, oops, we probably should have noticed what was going on. So the 9,000s are bylaws and we've been referring to them as policies. The only real difference is that it takes a 2/3 majority to suspend a bylaw because bylaws run the operation of the board, policies are the operation of the district. So Shipman and Goodwin has 2 sets of model bylaws. And so we're suggesting that we treat the 9,000s as bylaws, the rest as policies, that if the board wants to do that, then we'll just go back and do a search and change all the 9,000s from bylaws to policies. And again, only difference is the suspension takes 2/3 majority for a board bylaw. That's the only difference.
And you wouldn't need that for a policy. It would only be.
It's a majority.
Yeah, I like the idea that you would have to have 2/3 majority to protect bylaws,
The board
Yeah.
bylaws.
Yeah.
i.e. the policies.
A coup. It prevents a coup.
Marge, could you, sorry to put you on the spot, can you give me an example, even if it's crazy, of when we would perhaps want to suspend a board bylaw or Alan?
COVID?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but like what would we have suspended?
Well.
In that
back
video,
then-
we can expect that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I just needed to wrap my head around that better. Thanks.
It's very rare.
Yeah,
As you can
okay.
imagine. Right, so 9420, just technical changes, but we wanted to put it on the agenda so that you could see what was going on. So 9420 is the formulation, adoption, and amendment of policies. This is Shipman's model policy, but it's been revised to reflect our practice. Because different boards allow policies to come to the full board in different ways. So this, we hope, reflects our practice.
9430, just to
9430.
correct you,
Sorry,
said 20 by
9430.
mistake.
I need to put my glasses.
Anyone have anything there?
No, I was fine with that one.
I was too.
Fine.
Yeah.
Cool.
It just point out that any modification to regulations have to come to the board, any revisions, is that correct? I mean, I'm not
So
sure.
the next policy 9440 discusses administrative regulations. And even though the revisions are sort of technical and just sort of clarify what an administrative regulation is, paragraph 3 does talk to the administrative regulations come to the board, and the board's job is to see whether they're inconsistent with the policy.
But I'm just clarifying that, that means in here that any revision that's made, a small revision or otherwise has to come through the board. Which is fine, I just.
Okay.
If there's a policy that it's attached to,
Impact.
Yes.
not, student handbooks or things like that.
Okay.
All right, so that was 9440. 9450 talks about the suspension of policies, bylaws, and administrative regulations, and you can see the examples of how different items are suspended or are just suspended, sorry.
Okay.
Okay. Policy 9520, board members are entitled to reimbursement for expenses. This just makes it clear what you can be reimbursed for and how it's done.
Everybody good? Think we're all good?
Okay. 9530, we can't really tell the town what kind of insurance to have, so we deleted that. And the second paragraph that tracks the statute exactly of what boards are required to have in the way of insurance.
Everyone, okay?
Do we need this if it's by statute?
No, but we had it, and so the language was a little clunky about the board maintains adequate individual liability to protect itself. It sort of didn't match the language, but we do not need it.
And it's just copying statute, why we have it.
Honestly, we just maintained it because since you had a policy about insurance, we wanted board members to feel comfortable that they were covered by the insurance, but we can repeal it.
I don't know, it's a nice reminder,
Yeah.
given some of the history, Dave. It's redundant, I agree with you, but I also, some of these policies are helpful reminders to us that exist in the statute too. I think if there wasn't like kind of an experience recently, I probably would say get rid of it, but I don't know, I'm a little sensitive to it.
I like the all-in-one place-ness of it to keep it in our bylaws,
I don't think it hurts.
but a fair point.
Thank you.
So 9540 board evaluations, we just cleaned up some of the language. You don't need this policy, but you do an evaluation at your retreat each year. We just cleaned up the language that
Okay.
refers to April and that there can't be any other item on the agenda. Jessica, I did check with Jessica because we don't do a final written evaluation, but she felt that the surveys that you all fill out would suffice.
Okay. Are those memorialized anywhere? No.
I don't know whether
In the-
Patrice sends the survey to you or you.
We
or
would,
you
have-
use
we
your
would have,
district
we would
email
have a
address.
record of it.
Okay.
Is there a reason we would compel ourselves to do an annual written evaluation? Is that statutory or is that just our own?
No, it's not statutory.
I think it's great practice. And it kind of forces us to do it.
We reduce it to a writing, then that becomes subject to FOIA.
So I think if you emailed Patrice the surveys, it's probably already subject to FOIA. The individual surveys.
But we do review it in public and have the conversation in public, so it's pretty public regardless, but it's still
I don't
open
mind it
for
being
discussion.
No, I don't mind it being full.
So the only option is to remove the word written if you want in the first paragraph.
I like the written. It makes
I
it
like that. I
fun.
mean, I think it forces us to sit down and do it. I like it.
I do too. I think it's good practice and good, a good check.
Mhm.
Dave, any more from you?
I would, but
Sorry, you broke up. Are you saying you'd repeal it?
I would remove the word written.
Okay,
However, it seems that I'm the only one out of the four of us.
okay, okay. Thank you. We can discuss that with the full board.
Okay, graduation requirements, the changes to the policy are really rather minor, but doing a red line version was because the old policy referred to the classes of 20 and 22. So the only two changes are that for the class, beginning for the graduating class of 2025, there's the FAFSA requirement. They either have to fill it out or they have to, people have to sign a waiver. And beginning with the class of 2027, there's a 0.5 credit requirement for financial literacy. It's included in the STEM requirements. We already have courses that satisfy that requirement. We did check with the state. And so the total number of credits doesn't change. Everything else remains exactly the same.
I had a couple questions here.
Go.
We have lost some of the language in here about a student required to take all these credits. There was previously language about being exempt due to IEP specifics.
There is that language. I have to find it because I checked for that language.
Okay, I
too.
only saw that you can
PE.
get out of world language for if you're deaf or have hearing difficulties, or getting out of PE if you have physical ailments. I didn't see any mention of IEP. I may have missed it. But
That was one of my questions, is what, I'm sure there are other opt-outs that are not.
that aren't captured, I think, in this new
So we didn't
version.
change any of that language. So let me see if something happened when we
Okay.
tried to do the
Okay.
red line. But it was not the intention to change that.
And we did go from 22 required credits to 25 required credits.
That's been
The case.
while.
Right. Okay. That was 20 to 22 was 22 credits. And now we're up to 25. Are there more hours in the week now?
Well, you know that most of the kids have been taking 25, so.
Just kidding. Sorry. Anyone else have questions?
Nope.
I just have a question about this FAFSA requirement. So even if you're not applying for financial aid, what do you do in that case?
Sign the waiver.
You sound the waiver that says.
And someone now has to keep track of the waivers.
Okay.
It's just,
All right.
Okay, if we can check on that piece. And then, does that need to come back to us, or should we see where
if
that
somehow
is?
the language was dropped from the previous policy, I can just add it back when it comes to the
Yeah.
board.
Okay, so we can still take this forward?
Yeah.
Okay, which I think means we're taking everything forward.
I think so.
Yep.
It's a banner day, obviously with things to discuss, but that's great. Anything else, or shall we move to public comment? Public comment, Chris?
Good morning. If anybody in person or online would like to participate in public comment, please approach the podium or use the raised hand icon and wait for the chair to recognize you. Please state your name and address for the record, and you will have up to 3 minutes to comment. Please note the time with the chair. There are no raised hands at this time.
Okay, motion to adjourn, Sarah, John, we good?